Now I want to introduce a couple of objects to pause the flow of the narrative and introduce two objects. And the first one is a hierarchy of emotions. What I want to suggest is that as you move from the sociopathic state of fight, flight, freeze instinct, the survival instinct of our reptilian ancestors starting 200 million years ago with the crocodiles, that and I'll just add another piece, which is the 80-20 principle, which is that 80% of what I say can probably be released and let go of to focus on the 20% that is most relevant, valuable, accurate in your paradigm, etc. for you. You know, I'm a little bit lazy in areas of fact checking, and so, you know, I'd been talking about the reptilian brain, which fits closely into a number of my paradigms, and so I thought, well, I should probably look it up, and I did find crocodiles are 200 million years old. But there's the way that I approach a lot of this is through imagery and pattern cohesion. So in a certain sense, it's all storytelling. I'm enjoying a scientist's critique of the Big Bang Theory at the moment, which Terence McKenna likes to talk about as the limit case of credulity, that if you can believe that the entire universe, for no reason at all, popped out of this thing smaller than the size of a pea, and for no apparent reason, and we don't know what happened before, well, you can believe anything. And so, and there's a lot of self-referential science and politics where they discover this, that's the opposite of what they discovered a few years ago, and that's proof of the Big Bang, and then they discover this other opposite, and that's proof of the... It's just fun to look at what is clearly a very fluid object called truth. And yet, while something may or may not be true in... you know, I was trying to figure out where... I point at this base here, which is kind of where I feel this deep ache, pain in my head. But there doesn't seem to be a brain there called the reptilian brain. And yet, the evolutionary suggestion of biology shows within the spine, within various things that we do in our human evolution, we have carried the residue of, you know, the entire Earth's history in a certain sense, starting with minerals and small, you know, cells and how we grow, and going through the fish-like stage in the water, the womb, and, you know, there's all this correlation between Earth history. So anyway, I don't take that too seriously. So it's more about what can a paradigm allow one to see, and is that seeing useful relative to one's values? And I'd suggest there's a hierarchy of value, and, you know, down at the bottom, one of the lowest points was hatred. Hatred is like a needle. And so when I had chronic fatigue and complete exhaustion and felt unwanted, worthless, hopeless, lonely, did not want to engage with the world, did not want to face my life, did not want to crawl over to a phone call to hear something I didn't want to hear. There was no leaving of that pit, if you follow me. There's nothing within hopelessness and hurt and loneliness that says, this is great, let's work harder at this. And there's nothing within hopelessness that says, there's hope. So it's a self-referential loop. And but hate and revenge are counter. So there was no hope of being loved. There was no hope of being helped. There was no hope of joy and picking up the phone. There was a tremendous amount of risk and loneliness, with every cultural interaction in the United States being a highly probable source of either separation or pain or loneliness. So there's no hope in that. But when it pivots from the goal of being loved, which seems hopeless, when you ask for help, please help me, please love me, and everyone says no, it seems pretty hopeless. But to the point of revenge, because of course my mind was tracking that I was in this state as a direct correlation to facilitator negligence. And so I might be a 2-year-old infant in my feelings, abandoned and helpless, but I've still got a sophisticated brain that is watching that what has put me into a 2-year-old devastated and traumatized state, losing years of my life in health crises, is inaction that needed to be taken in appropriate ethical, therapeutic, and medicinal guidelines within the community and facilitator body, and a lack. So inaction and action that pushed me away from what was good for me. When you're in loneliness and shame, you want to get out of secrecy. So Anne pushed me into secrecy. All of the facilitators pushed me into secrecy. Well, that's abuse. So my mind is tracking. So hate actually is this needle-like energy. It's not pleasant, but it is the only thing that can pierce through that amount of collapse to say, well, no, I cannot get out of bed in the assumption that I know what I'm doing. I obviously don't. I cannot get out of bed in the assumption that I will be loved. I'm not being loved here. I'm being hurt. But I can get out of bed because I'm angry and because I hate and because I want justice. You see, this is a very new experience for me. And so I saw, aha, that's the evolutionary purpose of this emotion. To break through the endless cycle of hurt about being hurt and then being hurt about that and hurt about being, and so it breaks out. And it breaks the inward abandonment. It's like there's something wrong with me that these facilitators can't do their job, which is how I feel. It's not how I think, it's how I feel. But the feelings are producing the biological chemistry of depression and hopelessness. The thoughts are just kind of panicking up there because the feelings are not responding. When you have dissociation, and this is what's so dangerous about therapeutic abuse, when you have dissociation, the dissociated parts of your feelings do not respond to your present thought because you've dissociated them. If they were integrated, you'd change your thoughts and the feelings change. But when they're dissociated feelings, they don't change with the current conscious thoughts, if that makes sense. It's kind of like if you have a part of your car that's heating up so much that it's about to catch fire and you throw it out of the car and then you cool the car down, it's out of the car. It's not cooling down, it's out of the car. Now you cool the car down with air conditioning and stuff, it doesn't affect that. You've got to have connection before you can change something. And you need to see someone before you can love them. You cannot just say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're not going to include you and ask anything. You have to actually associate before you can influence anything. And you have to have trust before someone will choose to associate with you. And that trust has been burned multiple times. The facilitators do not earn that trust with their behavior. They earn great concern for how far in the murder process is each facilitator willing to go before they will choose to own their own shadow rather than kill another human being. I don't know. I wasn't willing to die to reach that point, but I know that if I did, there was no one checking in. And so that's why I say it's this dance of emotion. But I wanted to bring in the 80-20 principle. I wanted to bring in the evolution of emotion. Now, once you've got hate, anger, etc., to get you out of bed and to start expressing, the expression starts to unload some of the toxicity that's been put inside. It starts to give it out. Now, as the energy goes out, the terror and hopelessness goes down, because what made the situation hopeless was the shame and the terror transferred to me by my therapists and facilitators to protect them. That's, it was hopeless. One human being cannot carry the shame and the inadequacy and the lies of an entire community. It's too toxic. That energy has to be owned equally. The facilitators cannot carry the shame and toxicity for the entire community. It's too toxic. You have to decentralize toxins to a point where they are manageable. And then sometimes they're still not manageable, and what you actually have to do, much like taking turns raising a barn. One person cannot raise a barn, but a community can raise a barn. One person cannot heal trauma, but a community can heal trauma. And I'm actually using, among other things, the energy of the community in this circle trauma. It's not a very conscious and willing permission, but it is nonetheless engaging with the circle. Now, 5 or 6 people, possibly 3 people that are particularly clear, can clear off the shame of one individual, can clear it off and put it to rest. And then the attention can go to another, and step by step you can remedy the shame, the contracts, the trauma in the community, if you have anyone with the maturity, intelligence, honesty, and self-love willing to do that. That can be done. But you can't not only not help someone, but give an already abused person who's been carrying the shame and trauma of their parents and their culture without any ownership. A whole new community shames you. You'll kill that person very quickly. Either directly, or they'll kill themselves because it's so miserable. Which is a murder. It's just the same. It's if I take you and put you in a cage and humiliate you to the point that you don't want to live, and then give you a rope and you hang yourself, that's murder. There's no difference. It's an intelligent choice to die when you are in a sociopathic environment. Now, so emotions have a hierarchy. You go from hate, you go from this helpless despair, collapse, hopeless, into hate and revenge, into anger, then into greater sense of confidence and energy, then greater sense of hope, and you slowly climb the emotional ladder up to a sense of ecstatic joy. And this is a traumatic climb for abuse survivors, because one of the things that is a rule in every abusive household is that certain emotions are not allowed. So you have to climb through all the emotions in order to get back to stasis, back to well-being. Well, when you hit that emotional wave that is not allowed in your abuse contract, that it gets punished, that it is life-threatening to feel that feeling, now you have a big resistance. You've got your traumatic self saying, don't feel this feeling or you will die. And you've got your growing self saying, we need to work through all of this to come back to balance and health. And then you've got your abusers telling you you're wrong, you're not seeing it all, you're totally crazy. So you've got your abuser, your inner abuse contract saying, don't do it, you'll die. You've got your facilitators saying you're crazy. This isn't how it should be at all. No. I mean, they're crazy, but they're telling me through the embodiment of that behavior that I'm crazy. No, of course we don't need to owe you an apology for devastating your life and savings. Of course we love you even as we're, plowing you into the hillside. Of course we want what's best for you even though we're not going to do a goddamn thing. So, this is complete insanity when you're in trauma. And so you've got internal voices saying you're going to die. You've got external voices saying you're crazy and we're not going to help you and you're not worth it. And then you've got New Age programming, which is I'll be positive in this and that, don't do this, don't be negative. And then you've got the life cycle, which needs to go through the full emotional wheel that has no judgment. It's part of life. It's part of, if you get thrust into the ocean a mile below the water, you're not going to get to surface unless you come up through every meter of that water. And divers don't have to deal with judgment that says meter 26 is toxic, you're a bad person if you go through meter 26. But cultural human beings have to hear that this emotion is bad, self-pity is bad, that's bad, blame is bad, all of these things are bad. So the question is, how does a diver come to surface when they've been plunged below all those bad layers and have to then come up through them, to find the part that is good? So it's this crazy scenario. It's reality making you crazy at that point. Or I should say culture. So this is one object. Now the other object is persona. That there's a hierarchy of persona. That at the core level, when we are deeply traumatized through shock, being unloved, being abandoned, various things like that, we go back to the youngest age of the deepest wound. In part because it feels solid. And when you have unresolved trauma, you want certainty. And that part of yourself the best. That part has always been there. You've always been terrified there. So you go back there. Now, to leave that wound and slowly grow up again involves confronting the abuser. But that young part cannot confront the abuser. They're too small. It's going back into the parent contract. So this is another very, very, very challenging thing where what I've done is given myself in the sanctity of this camera more than 500 hours of going through the different layers of emotion, going through the different personas, going through the different perspectives. You see, and this camera doesn't want to kill me. This camera does not look at me with rage. In fact, when I look back at that face there, I see kindness, I see understanding, I see a human being who understands what I'm going through, who's sad for the pain that I'm going through, who cares about my well-being enough to listen and talk again and again and again, and slowly move through the personas from that terrified little child up into the angry adolescent, then, oh my God, I'm going to get punished, back into the terrified little child, up into the angry adolescent, I'm not going to be shut up because of this fear, this is wrong, and this is where blame is actually a very important wave. It's not my fault, it's your fault, this. An adolescent cannot deal with this stuff and should not have to. But unfortunately, as with myself, with adult parents, my adolescent never had an adult. So, he had to deal with this stuff. And it's important that he be heard. Now, there's a witness, of course, watching that says, well, this isn't terribly, spiritual. This is not... But I've got to shut that witness up as the spiritual critic and say, look, we are 2-year-old, terrified and not able to move. And we're going to die if we don't do something about that. And the only person coming forward is an angry adolescent. I've never met an adult who showed up in this terrain. Therapist, parent, neighbor, school teacher. I haven't met an adult who showed up in this terrain. Well, my adolescent has to do it again. It's like, fuck you, all this stuff. And my job is to love that adolescent and understand him. It's like, I get it. I get it. They are fucking idiots. Yes, I get it. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and you're right about that. And you're right about that. And then he starts to calm down and feel heard and feel safe because someone is not blaming him for all the obvious absurdities that are all around him. It's like one thing after another. With the inevitable rule, we are so crazy we cannot talk about what's crazy around here. Doesn't matter what it is, country, school, blah, 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 we cannot talk about the insanity here. So this is miserable, He doesn't want to have to be a parent at that age. He doesn't want to have to teach himself adulthood, which is almost impossible without initiation and stuff like that. He doesn't want to have to face the horror of the terrified 2-year-old and not know how to love that part because nobody has loved him. And he doesn't want fucking therapists charging him money to make things a lot worse. So he's pissed. And I get it. And so, and then he feels completely self-pity because he knows that the more angry and this that he gets, the more he gets blamed in this culture. There's no one that says, wow, that's a good point. Let's change the school systems. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's put children first. No. This culture has a great answer to cover up all this bullshit. It's very simple. You're being juvenile. You're being adolescent. You should grow up, i.e., accept a barbaric level of stupidity all around you, not look at any of that, look at how current older people are behaving on TV. What's the mature? Okay, it's the blonde short for girl. Oh, I see. With the sophisticated glasses, that's an adult. Okay, I'm gonna put on those. What bullshit? This has nothing to do with adults. Who's thinking? This, and I like him. I like this adolescent guy. I mean, he pays attention to patterns and tries to point them out. And he's got one idiotic adult after another, one idiotic adult child after another, just not doing much. Doesn't want to think. Just do it this way. It's easier. You'll be able to get a good job. It's like, who wants a fucking good job? I'll work for myself. So anyway, so this is part of the cycle. And, he's a great thinker in there, a great pioneer and designer. And he's absolutely furious that rather than being appreciated, rewarded for all this effort and for caring about people and looking and thinking, you're all saying, learn to think. I'm actually thinking. You're not, but I actually am, and all this stuff. And then what does he get is people being scared of him, people blaming him, people telling him not to think, not to do this. And he's fucking sick of it. It's like, get the fuck out of here, you idiots. And it's like, well, what's possible with that energy? Throwing this bullshit out, what's possible? And all kinds of things are possible. And so this then leads to the creative thing. I made an 8-hour video pioneering slow movies where I just started the camera in the morning, the life of me with my girlfriend. So starting at 8 a.m. till 8 p.m., just continuous camera running everywhere we went out on the bike, everywhere, and just talking with the camera about our life and bringing people in. That's the kind of movie I want to watch. It's like, and no, it didn't take any money. No, it was just an 8-hour movie, just done. It's like, why not? You know, what's all this crap? You know, I always watched a Robert Bly movie recently, and it's like, there's so many great footages that we had to cut out. No, you didn't. You just kowtowed to what everyone else did. Why didn't you put the whole fucking thing in there? 13-hour documentary about Robert Bly. Why not? I'd have watched it. It would be fun. You know, so there's this, you know, this part actually needs to break through the depressive cycle. The depressive, oh, I'll get in trouble for that. Oh, I'll get in trouble for that. I can't say that. I can't say that. I can't think this. I can't see this. There's nothing that I can think and see that's of any use and value whatsoever. You know, people just like to be praised for incompetence. Well, you know, I guess I have to not only not think, but start lying, you know. And so this is a frustrating energy that can either be sour and backward, or it can just come out. And so one of my goals is, you know, to, you know, the great benefit from having been betrayed by church, Christian son of a bitches, parents, idiotic adult children, you know, with PTSD, who, anyway, and then, you know, crazy Waldorf teachers that, you know, commit violence, lie, teach crappy stuff, talk, you know, all this stuff, you know, get angry about the truth, you know, all kinds of bullshit, have all kinds of superiority guilt trips about how much better they are than public schools, you know, without ever asking the child how he feels. This is, of course, superiority over the child's head. And then, you know, then you have the business community where, thank heavens, I worked for myself. But it's a pretty crappy system in many ways. You know, I don't often feel like I get to be a real human being with my clients and employees. I've been fiddling with that and got it up pretty good. So, like, I now have dinner with my crew sometimes and stuff. But anyway, it's a little bit sociopathic. We got a completely fucked up culture, and then very hostile dating world. And I've got this fucked up country, you know, which the more I deal with it, whether it's with my house or my visa for my fiance or anything like that, I see these guys don't have anything. They're not interested in me. Not a goddamn person. You know, they just do their thing, process their paperwork that has nothing to do with what's good for me or anyone else. It's just what they're doing. So there's a certain liberation. And then when I realize, you know, all my therapists are just fucked up in their own little heads, focused on the most arcane and ridiculous arguments, you know, ruining their own lives, and then asking me to cover for them when they ought to be showing up and doing their job. It's like liberation. It's like, okay, throw all that out. What do we want to do from here? And so this actually, along with my sweetheart, you know, where I've watched the whole world fuck her over for an entire life. It's like they just keep on fucking this woman over as long as they could get away with it. No, you know, they'd keep fucking women over as long as they didn't, you know, the suffrage, you know, they could suppress the suffrage. They'd keep enslaving people. This fucked up culture is going to keep giving its pain to whoever it'll take it. And it's going to be the most sensitive, the most vulnerable, the most needy people on Maslow's hierarchy of needs that are forced under duress to take the shittiest roles in the culture. And they'll just be so delighted. Oh, good, you're carrying the shit. Now I don't have to. And they'll just be left there in a shitty role, not doing the right thing, not doing the honorable thing, not listening to conscience, not growing, nothing, until that group says, fuck you, and gets strong enough to kick it off. And they're going to be hurt as they try and get strong to kick it off. That pisses me off. It's a fucked up sociopathic protocol. I'm tired of it. I'm completely fucked up, tired about it. So where does that anger and, you know, the hurt, first of all, has to go to anger. Well, that moves it out. See, now you're hearing about it. rather than me just feeling like, what's wrong with me that I'm being treated this way? What's wrong with my girlfriend that she's being treated this way? It's like, what's wrong with you for treating us this way? What's wrong? You know, wake up, you idiots. Wake up. And so, you know, in this anger, you know, it's an antidote to depression. It's medicine. And, you know, and of course I do, on other levels, care about people. So the question is, how am I going to use this energy to get it out of my body and do something mildly to greatly useful in the process? Well, one thing I thought, you know, just document the mind. This is the psyche. I'm not that different from you or anyone else. So if this is what I'm feeling when I'm treated this way and I see these things, it's probably what a good number of people are going to feel if they are treated this way and see these things, if they have the freedom to talk. And I realized I have more freedom to talk than most people. You know, I'm flat on my back, you know, and can't work more than a few hours a day, and it's sometimes not at all. And so I've got time for these videos, and I'm very curious about the mind. So I watch these nuanced gradations. I learn, oh, this is what I was taught about hate, and this is its actual evolutionary function in it for a traumatized patient in a sociopathic environment that's being dumped on by the people charged with giving good medicine. You know, so okay, hate is good. And it actually fits in with one of my paradigms in which, you know, if you're driving to mile 917 and you're at mile 6, then mile 3 is bad, but mile 7 is good. But if you're at mile 212, then mile 7 is bad, but mile 218 is good. It's about the direction. And that's a very important thing, I think, that, and it's one of the keys and one of the paradigms around all this, is the direction of movement. From internalizing energy to externalizing it, number one. Number two, opening up to hatred as the first step of lift, but continuing to embrace the up, not clinging too tightly with it. You know, if you know, hatred and revenge can get you out of bed, and then can focus a lot of energy, which is really useful. And then at a certain point in focusing that energy, there will be a change. Now that change opens up to the next wave of emotion. Now there's a sense of self-appreciation, a sense of safety. Then safety starts coming in. See, safety dissolves hate. You don't feel hate when you feel completely safe. You feel compassion. But how are you completely safe if not a single person, including you, is standing up for you? You see? You are not safe in that environment. Your therapists are supposed to stand up for you, but they're not. They're selling you out. You're supposed to stand up for yourself, but you're not. You're protecting your therapists. Your parents are supposed to be standing up for you, but they're not. You're supposed to be standing up for you, but you're selling out you to protect your parents so that they won't further traumatize you. So you are not safe. And then the culture and the country is supposed to be standing up for you, but they're protecting the abuse pattern of the parents. So you are not safe. Hatred can only exist when a number of variables are present, but one of them is a lack of safety. You bring in safety, hatred dissolves. You see, but the actions that hatred leads to can create safety. You follow what I'm saying? You know, one of the big dangers for me was going into invisible insanity that was so complicated that I wouldn't even be able to track what was going on. Well, when an entire culture colludes in silence to make sure that certain conversations cannot be had, Oh, I know, we'll disconnect his email accounts. Oh, I know, we won't read his emails. Oh, I know, we'll just tell lies. This isn't a high issue. I know, we'll just silence someone in a state of overwhelming unintegrated energy. This creates insanity, and it can kill people directly and indirectly. So someone has to stand up for that individual. Now, of course, it should be the parents, it should be the church, it should be the culture, it should be authority figures. Should be, but it isn't. So what's left to do? Either collapse or go into hatred and revenge. Now, hatred and revenge gets the ball going. The ball going gets the energy coming out. The energy going out moves towards strategy and synthesis. That leads to safety. Now, the safety dissolves the hate, you see? If you say, oh, I can't feel hate, I'm not going to do anything, I don't want to do anything hateful, then you go back into collapse. I've tried it. But if you say, okay, I am going for, one way or another, I am going to be seen, I'm going to live, it's going to be documented, and I am going to fight for my well-being. And if these fuckers don't know what they're doing, they're going to get run over, because it is wrong, it is evil for a therapist to take an abuse survivor's money, to abuse them, and then abandon them and blame them for the abuse, and then tell lies and block the whole story. That is sick. It's juvenile. So that's not going to happen. Now, how much of it? Well, so I create safety, first of all, of not being shamed in that dynamic, because, for example, if I had not succeeded in lifting myself out of this shame and abuse cycle, then I'd be dead, and there would be a document trail that any psychotherapist and trauma therapist would pin on the high facilitators very easily. I mean, this is a classic murder setup. And my assistant would have the funds to make that known and visible, and that would be the end of the high community. Because the community is complicit by their silence and standing by, in the same way that our culture is complicit with our parents' abuse. I wrote to the team, Melinda Anderson, so nice to hear from you, wishing you well. I don't have time to read your email. Bye. And that's a good response from a high team member about participant abuse. That's a good response. And that's fucked up. The entire high group, I'm having so much trouble with this, this, and this, I'm needing to commit suicide. Well, how about some shameful, unwanted advice? We're not going to show up for you. That's fucked up. You see? And this is a fucked up community. And it's not the individual people's fault. This is what happens in a culture of emotional illiteracy, with social mass taking the place and betraying the wounded child that lies at the heart of so many of us. And if you have any empathy and you realize the amount of wounded children around us, it doesn't even matter if you or I had a great childhood. There are people around us having evil perpetrated on them as we speak by shame-based parents that do not get support to do any other thing in this fucked up culture. A shame-based abused mother working 3 jobs and being shamed and told she's too emotional is not going to go into deep shame work and protect her child from her own internal abuser. That's not going to happen. That's like sticking someone up 3 miles in the air on one leg, standing on a piece of rebar, and saying, well, if you can survive that, good luck to you. We wish you the best. If you fall on the ground, well, we did our best. We gave you a piece of rebar to stand on, and I guess you were just too weak to balance there indefinitely. So you fell to your death. Such a shame. This is a complete setup for the emotional self. So I'm furious about this kind of bullshit. I'm furious you have to put up with it. I'm furious I have to put up with it. I'm furious that our children are being asked day by day by incompetent parents, schools, and governments to put up with this bullshit. And then they go on TV as if they're going to learn how to escape this bullshit from there. Just a constant sitcom-y message. Everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Let's talk about the fact that your shoes aren't cool. How wonderful to divert you into complete nonsense minutia while your soul's being ripped out before your eyes and you're becoming an addict to your phone and you're watching your parents destroy their lives in front of you and you have not a single ally to turn to. Oh yeah, and then there's the therapist. Wait till they get their hands on you. It's fucked up. Absolutely fucked up. So, of course, there's a lot of this because there's no room for this in this culture. You know, teenagers throw rocks at windows. I don't want to do that. So where's the fucking room to do this? Who's listening? You know, it's outrageous. You know, and then they're made to feel bad because they haven't been given an outlet of an honorable voice to talk about what they don't like. Of course they don't like it. They're human beings. They're not idiots. There's nothing wrong with children being born. There's something very wrong with what we do to them. Anyway, so this has to be moved through. So this is energizing, by the way. I mean, I have chronic fatigue because I suppress all this energy for the courtesy of the stupid idiots around me who don't want to deal with it. So I got to clench it in this muscle and clench it in this muscle and talk like this and don't want to offend you. Yes, I'm busy. Do you think I could possibly get a few moments in? Oh, well, call me in a few weeks and maybe we'll find a few minutes for you to tell me how wonderful I am. No, let's deal with this. You know, so what's an avenue that's big enough? Well, 10x thinking is one of the big avenues. What's it? Genius Network by Joel Poloski, I think it is. Anyway, Joe Polish. Genius Network on YouTube. You know, you've got endless hours laying in bed protecting your abusers. Well, you've got lots of things to read and listen to. So Genius Network came along, and I love this paradigm of 10x thinking, that it's much easier to improve something 1,000% than it is to improve it 50% or 100%, because you shift from incremental thinking to reinventing things in response to a future you've just created as a probability field with the question, can it be 10 times better? What would it have to be? So 10x thinking is a big enough room to fuel some of this energy into a very positive direction. So now we start to get into adult territory. Now we start to get into joy. Now we start to get into beauty. You see, but you don't get there by suppressing what's fucked up. You don't get there by lying to protect your abuser and playing into the political bullshit. You get there by honoring the full step of the wheel out. And so that's a little bit of the process. And sometimes it gets too dark and I just create a positive project. So, 100,000 acts of love. It's too dark. I'm just in too much pain around the dark. So let's go out and do acts of love today. Who can we help? Okay, so-and-so needs some dental work. Let's drive them to the dentist and here's 1,000 baht for your dentist. So-and-so temples need some lighters. No one can burn the incense. So let's stock up on a motorcycle full of lighters and distribute them around the temple. That's 100,000 acts of love. And keep track of them and document them and make a documentary. And so the project there, and 30 days of being of service, paradigm of scientific well-being, 30 minutes and up to $30 every day to create the most positive impact imaginable. And how can we do? Well, we can clean a beach. We can build these videos. We can hire this artist to do this. We can do, so 30 days of that and document that and put it out as a meme. And so this is exciting. So now we've got, stuff coming up. And then just feeling the honor that comes. You see, because that little boy and that little girl holds the key. The kingdom of heaven will be seen through the eyes of a child. It will not be seen through the suppressed, denied, abandoned eyes of a traumatized child. But it will be seen through the eyes of a child that is fought for, that is protected, that is served, that is loved. And as my child finds one fucking human being, in this case myself, who will fight for him the best he can, I'm an American, who will fight for him and say, no, you're not going to go down unhonored. No, I'm not going to let these therapists step all over you. No, I'm not going to let you carry their shit because they asked you to. You are going to have someone fighting for you. An adolescent, no more criticism. Let's hear what you have to say. Yes, that is fucked up. That's fucked up too. You got it. Yep. Absolutely. How can I help you? What the fuck can I do to help you since you've been stuck into this bullshit that you have nothing to do with? Well, how about this? How about this? Okay, done. Done. Let's do it. Oh. Finally, an adult isn't just shaming me for pointing out the obvious. Okay. So I got to actually discover what being an adult is. That's one of the gifts in this. It's like, I never knew what being an adult was because I never met one. And everyone sold out this child for their own stupidity and their own delusions. It's garbage they're selling him out for. He's the gold. He's the one that can see beyond the veil. He's the one that can access beauty. He's being sold out for tin cans, for paper money. It's disgusting. This cult is disgusting in the way it sells its children out for trash. Granite countertops, got to abandon my kids again, Oh, you have to understand, I've got to see the granite countertop, man, So much bullshit. So much bullshit. I'm sick of watching it. Anyway, this moves out, and it keeps bubbling up, because I've been fucking stuffed down there for 40 fucking years to accommodate the bullshitty crap going on around. It keeps coming out, keeps coming out. So that gives energy. As I release that and stop penting it in, now I have energy to do the other things. So started a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. Talked with one of my supposed mentors about this. Oh, you'll never succeed with that. Done it, did it in 4 months. Talked to another one. Will you be on the board? No, I'm too busy to have a single 1-hour board meeting. Fuck this stuff. It's like, I've got time for 5 hours of television a day, just don't have time to actually do something useful. 1 hour a year. So disappointing. This cult is disappointing. The brainwashed walk around doing what this cult says is a disappointment to me. Because it's so subpar. It's like 2 out of 10. Like, give me a break. We can't do better than this. Not if we're suppressing our child and our adolescent, telling them they're the bad ones. They know what's going on. They're living it. My child looking at school day after day, it's like, what crappy stuff. I've talked to 5 or 6 adults. They're not using any of this in their lives. What are they using? They're needing sales tools, they're needing yoga, they're needing this. We're not learning any of that. You just want me to live through 16 years of hell and stupidity? For what? So that you can say you're right when you're wrong? It's like, who are you selling out for my education? There's just so much. They know what's going on. You got to listen to them. You got to pay attention. You got to court them. They're tired of this bullshit. They're not going to show up if you patronize them. Give them a break. Take a stand for them. They'll guide you right to where things need to be. You know, the acculturated brain is so idiotic. But they're not fully in the cult yet. They know what they feel. You gotta love them. Someone's got to take a stand, or they're not going to show up. They're tired of being betrayed and then blamed for everything and then shut in the corner. So this is the little meta conversation of how to get out. So this is part of this object of the ascent through the descent, as opposed to climbing over and betraying, leaving the friend behind. This is the betrayal of Peter Sandhill. I don't want to feel bad, so I'm going to leave a traumatized patient behind me, just like I leave my own little boy behind me, to move on and try and be superhuman, to compensate for that, to go over all that grief and pain. Well, it's what we're taught in this cult. It's what we're taught. We just don't need to learn it again from our therapists. We need to learn something more useful, And so the site is partly my response to what has been useful. What's been useful to that little boy? What's been useful for that adolescent? What's been useful for me? And so 10x thinking, incredibly useful. So I'm working on a book on that. The documentary around this, very useful. Integration, when you've got dissociated parts, the more you say things, every time a wave comes in. So, that works. And, the balance is difficult for me as a sensitive. I get flooded in this, then flooded in this, and flooded in this. And so having a sense of perspective is very difficult. But what can you do? You do the best you can and document it so that if I fuck up, you'll learn. If I win, you'll learn. This is what I did. This is what happened. Let's see. So that brings me up into a place where there starts to be more gratitude, starts to be more safety. I can actually manage money right now, which is a big relief. And there's still some part of me trying to kill me because it's expecting to die from being strong. That's what you learn from an abusive household, that if you're strong, you get killed. You speak the truth, you get killed. And so there's still a part of me that's fighting my strength, trying to undermine every success so that I don't get so strong that I'll be killed, expecting every moment to die. There's a part of me that shouldn't be in there, but that is in there to protect the cowardice of my parents and my culture. He is doing the very best he can to sabotage me so that I won't die. Well, you got to appreciate him. He's doing something. And you got to respect that he read the eyes and the intentions in those people's faces pretty accurately. And you got to understand these betrayals don't end, you look at my father, and he just died in complete denial. I tried to get some sanity for my little ones by one last letter to him. 45-minute audio recording outlining what I was grateful for, all the areas he fucked me up, what hurt me, how he fucked me up, etc. His response, a few sentences, no apology, nothing. I've loved you unconditionally since the day you were born. Sounds good. It's always sounded good. Dad's good at sounding good. It's just one more lie. One more, I'm not going to look at you because that makes me feel bad. So I'll just die thinking of myself just like I lived thinking of myself. And so that's, you are going to have a child for a parent to the day you die. Bye. Well, you know, that's partly what I'm doing this for, is for someone like my dad. You see, because that was not my dad's nature. My dad just had the misfortune of being born in America to a father who just got back from World War II, who in a state of PTSD. My father had the misfortune of being a sensitive who was beaten into a sociopathic and traumatic state and given PTSD, and had the misfortune of being born into a culture that was more concerned about shaming men in their emotional literacy than teaching them a goddamn thing. And after all the abuse my father went through as a child, he didn't have much of a chance in this cult, statistically, of being a good parent. And these videos are for someone like him. Because if you're a parent, maybe you tweak things 20% and your son has 20% less abuse than my father. Well, maybe his son then does as well. This is for my father. I'm fighting for a world in which men and women, as children, are not used mentally, emotionally, sexually for their parents' abuse cycle, and are not shamed into silence by their church and their cult, but actually get support when they are abused. And then get real training in school about what that's like. What is shame? How does it get caused? Why does it caused? How it's not their fault. That would be a real education. And I'm fighting for that. We're not going to get that in a state of fucking denial, where anyone has the nerve to pipe up about it and their email account gets shut down by people teaching love, intimacy, and sexuality. We're not going to get there that way. It's bullshit. That's collusion with the abuse cycle. We're going to get there by taking a stand for the little boy and the little girl inside and understanding why they felt the way they felt and sticking it to any idiot who's more interested in their own dogma than learning and attuning to what their impact is. We don't need that. We need the courage to face the truth. And we're going to need lots and lots of help and lots of love. So if I die, that'll be a good evidence of what doesn't work. And if I live, that'll be a starting point for data. And it's going to be available as long as I live. This map of what does and doesn't work is going to be available. And I'm going to keep plugging away day by day. And hope that I get somewhere. And you'll be my witness. I get somewhere or not. And you are also a participant. You are also a participant. Become trauma literate. Read Bessel van der Kolk's book. Learn if you're highly sensitive. Read Passionate Marriage. Learn about addiction from, what's his name, Gabor Mate. Learn. Study. Be a participant. And then show up for your little one. You will not be able to show up for anyone unless you do. So thanks for playing and watching and witnessing. And that's the witnessing for today.